how some neighbors just become part of your routine? You don't know them well, you don't really hang out with them, but they're just there. That's how it was with the old lady who lived downstairs from me. She was sweet, the kind of person you waved without even thinking about it. For the first year I lived in that building, she was just Mrs. K from 1B. Then one morning, she left something for me, something so small, so normal, that ended up dragging me into one of the creepiest situations I've ever experienced in my life. And to this day, I still have no idea who or what I was dealing with. I'd moved into that building about a year before all this happened. It was a 4-story walk-up, nothing fancy. Rent was decent, walls were thin, plumbing had its moods. I worked weird hours, sometimes early mornings, sometimes late nights, so I didn't see most of my neighbors much. But Mrs. K, she was different. I'd see her on my way out in the mornings, usually carrying a canvas tote bag, heading to the little corner grocery. She was probably in her late 60s, maybe 70s, always in a cardigan no matter the weather, soft-spoken. And once in a while, when she came back from shopping, she'd knock on my door and hand me a paper bag with some bread or fruit. Her reason was always the same: I bought too much. It was a harmless little neighborly thing. I thought it was sweet. I mean, who doesn't like free groceries? One Saturday morning, I was still half asleep when I heard her knock. I opened the door and she smiled, held out another paper bag. This time it was apples. Big, shiny red ones. I said thanks, took the bag, and was about to close the door when I noticed something inside. Not inside with the apples, but tucked against the side of the bag was another paper bag, folded flat. I pulled it out, thinking maybe she'd give me an extra for recycling or something. That's when I saw my name on it, written in blue pen, right in the center, in handwriting that looked exactly like mine. Not similar, not close, exact. The same rounded M's, the same slanted H's. Even the way I had my eyes slightly off-center. I just froze for a second, holding that bag. I wanted to ask her about it. But when I looked up, she'd already turned and was heading down the hall toward her apartment. I ended up tossing the folded bag on my counter and telling myself it was just, I don't know, a weird coincidence. Maybe she'd found it in the recycling bin or something. The next morning, I decided I'd bring it back to her. I went downstairs and knocked on her door. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. Then I noticed the door wasn't latched all the way. I called out her name and gave it a little push. It swung open. Her apartment was empty. And I don't mean she just wasn't home. I mean completely stripped. No furniture, no rugs, no pictures on the wall. The air smelled like dust and old wood. I stepped inside, thinking maybe the building had sold it or something, and that's when I saw them. On the floor, against one bare wall, was a pile of paper grocery bags. Dozens of them, all folded neatly. And every single one had my name written on it, in that same exact handwriting. Some were written in pen, some in marker, a few in what looked like charcoal, but they were all mine, my exact style of writing. My stomach dropped. I backed out of there and ran upstairs. I called the landlord that day. He sounded confused and told me Mrs. K had been renting that unit for years. He hadn't heard anything about her moving out. When I told him about the empty apartment and the paper bags, he got quiet and just said, "I'll look into it." That was it. No one came to clean the place. No one new moved in. The door stayed locked. But about a week later, I found another paper bag outside my door. Same fold, same blue ink name in my handwriting. No groceries this time, just a bag. Over the next month, they kept showing up, sometimes once a week, sometimes twice in a day, always folded perfectly, always with my name. I stopped opening them. I just stacked them in my closet. I didn't want to know if there was something else inside. One night, I got home late from work. The hallway was dark. One of the lights had burned out. As I was unlocking my door, I noticed something at the end of the hall. A figure, small, hunched, standing perfectly still. My brain immediately said Mrs. K, but the shape was wrong. Too thin, too narrow. I blinked and it was gone. When I went inside, there was another paper bag waiting on my kitchen counter, which shouldn't have been possible. My door had been locked. That was the night I threw them all away. Every single bag in my closet. I didn't even check if the last one had groceries in it. I just stuffed them into a garbage sack and took it to the dumpster down the block. The next morning, there was one on my doorstep again. And this time, my name wasn't written on it. It just said, "You're almost out." I moved out a few weeks later. I didn't tell the landlord why. Sometimes I'll be in a store and see those same brown paper bags at the checkout, and my stomach knots up because I never figure out who was leaving them or how they got my handwriting so perfect, or what "you're almost out" meant. Almost out of what? Food? Time? And even though I've changed apartments, cities, and phone numbers, I still can't bring myself to open the last paper bag I found wedged under my welcome mat the day I moved out. It's in a box somewhere in storage. Still folded. Still waiting. You know that feeling when something so normal, so everyday, suddenly becomes a thing that keeps you awake at night? When a simple act of neighborly kindness turns into something that makes you question everything you thought you knew about the person living 15 feet away from you. My name's Jake, and I've been living in the same duplex in Oakland for about 3 years now. Nothing fancy, just a cramped one-bedroom with thin walls, and a landlord who takes his sweet time fixing anything, but was cheap, and honestly, I like my neighbor. At least, I thought I did. This is about what happened 6 months ago, about a basket of vegetables, some Polaroid photos, and how I learned that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones who wave at you every morning and keep their lawn perfectly trimmed. So like I said, I live in this duplex, the kind where your bedroom window faces your neighbor's bedroom window, separated by maybe 10 feet and a chain-link fence that's seen better days. My neighbor was this guy named Dennis, mid-50s, always wore these crisp button-down shirts even when he was gardening. Real quiet type, but friendly enough. We'd nod at each other, maybe exchange a "how about this weather" kind of conversation. The thing about Dennis was his garden. Man was obsessed with it. Every morning at exactly 6:30 a.m., I'd hear him out there. The scrape of his trowel, the gentle hiss of his watering can. From my kitchen window, I could see him tending to these perfect rows of vegetables. Tomatoes, cucumbers, bell peppers, some herbs I couldn't name. Everything organized, everything healthy and green. About 2 months into living there, Dennis started leaving me vegetables. Just like that, I'd come home from work, and there'd be this wicker basket by my back door with a few tomatoes or a cucumber, sometimes a handful of cherry tomatoes still warm from the sun. Never a note, never asked for anything in return. Just good neighbor stuff, you know? I always meant to thank him properly. Maybe bring the basket back with some beer or something. But our schedules never seemed to line up. I'd see him in his garden in the mornings when I was rushing to catch the BART, and by the time I got home, his house was dark. So I just waved when I saw him, mouthed "thank you," and point to the vegetables. He'd smile and nod. Simple as that. This went on for months. Honestly, it was nice. Made the whole neighborhood feel more, I don't know, connected? Like maybe not everyone was just some anonymous face behind a door. Then came that Tuesday in March. March 15th. I remember because it was the day after my birthday and I was still feeling that post-birthday emptiness, you know? That's another year closer to death, feeling that hits you when you're 28 and working a dead-end IT job. I got home around 7 p.m., tired as hell from dealing with some server crash at work. As usual, I checked for the basket. It was there, sitting in its normal spot by my back steps. But instead of vegetables, there was just one thing inside, a Polaroid photograph. Now, I hadn't seen a Polaroid in years. The thing was slightly yellowed around the edges, had that vintage instant camera look. But the photo itself was crystal clear, and what I saw made my stomach drop. It was me, sleeping in my bed. The angle was from the foot of my bed, looking toward the headboard. I was lying on my side, one arm hanging off the mattress, wearing this old Lakers t-shirt I sleep in. The photo captured everything. The pile of clothes on my nightstand, the charging cable snaking across the floor, even the way my blackout curtains were pulled shut. My first thought was that it had to be some kind of joke. Maybe Dennis had a weird sense of humor? But as I stared at the photo, my hands started shaking, because the more I looked at it, the more details I noticed. The timestamp at the bottom said it was taken at 2:47 a.m., the night before, so early Tuesday morning. I was alone in my apartment that night. I'm always alone in my apartment. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was photoshopped. Maybe Dennis found some random photo online and thought it would be funny to mess with me. But no, that was definitely my bedroom, my bed, my shirt. Hell, I could even see the specific way I'd throw my jeans on the floor. Someone had been in my bedroom while I was sleeping. I immediately checked all my locks. Front door, back door, every window. Everything was secure, no signs of forced entry. I even crawled around looking for broken window latches or pick locks, but nothing. My apartment was tight as a drum. That's when I decided to go talk to Dennis. I walked over to his place, photo in hand, ready to ask him what the hell this was supposed to mean. But when I knocked on his door, no answer. I could see lights on inside, could hear what sounded like a TV, but no response. I knocked harder, called out, "Dennis, it's Jake from next door." Nothing. I walked around to his backyard to check if he was in his garden. That's when I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The garden, his perfect, obsessively maintained garden, looked like it hadn't been touched in weeks. The tomato plants were brown and wilted. Weeds had sprouted between the rows. The neat borders he always maintained were overgrown with crabgrass. It looked abandoned, like someone had just up and left one day. But that was impossible. I'd seen him just last week, hadn't I? Or was it the week before? I tried to remember the last time I'd actually seen Dennis. Not just heard him. The scraping sound in the morning, the watering. When was the last time I'd actually seen him with my own eyes? The more I thought about it, the more uncertain I became. Had I seen him recently? Or had I just been hearing the sounds and assuming when you live somewhere long enough, you stop really looking? You know, you just go through the motions. Standing there in his overgrown garden, photo in my hand, I felt this creeping realization that maybe Dennis hadn't been around for a while. Maybe weeks. So who took the photo? I went back to my apartment and tried to push it out of my mind. Put the photo in a drawer, ordered some Chinese food, watched Netflix until I passed out on my couch. But I kept waking up every hour or so, listening for sounds, checking the locks. The next morning, I was getting ready for work when I heard it. The familiar scraping sound from Dennis's yard. I rushed to my window and looked out, but I couldn't see anyone. The sound was definitely coming from his garden, but from my angle, I couldn't make out who was there. I threw on some clothes and went outside. Dennis's yard was empty, but now there was fresh dirt around the tomato plants, and someone had cleared away some of the weeds. Not all of them. Just enough to make it look like someone was trying to maintain the garden without really knowing what they were doing. That evening, I parked across the street and watched Dennis's house for 2 hours. No lights, no movement, no sign of life. But I could swear I saw a curtain move in an upstairs window. When I got back to my apartment, there was another basket by my door, another Polaroid. This one showed me standing at my kitchen window, holding the first photograph. The angle was from outside, clearly taken from Dennis's yard. But here's what made my blood freeze. The timestamp showed it was taken at 11:23 p.m. the night before. I remember that exact moment. I'd been looking out at Dennis's house, trying to figure out if anyone was home, and I'd been holding that first photo. Someone had been in Dennis's yard, watching me, while I was looking for them. I called the police. told him about the photos, about my possibly missing neighbor, about feeling like someone was stalking me. The officer who came out was this tired-looking woman in her 40s who clearly had better things to do. She took down my information, glanced at the photos, and said they'd do a wellness check on Dennis. 2 hours later, she called me back. Dennis had answered the door. She said he was fine, just been keeping to himself lately. When she asked about the photos, he seemed confused and said he didn't know anything about them. Probably just kids playing pranks. She suggested, file a report if it happens again. But I knew she was lying, or Dennis was lying to her, because I'd been watching his house when she supposedly knocked on his door, and I never saw any police car, never saw anyone answer that door. That night, I barely slept. I kept my bedroom door locked and wedged a chair under the handle. Every sound made me jump. The house settling, a car door slamming outside, the neighbor's cat yowling. Around 3 a.m., I heard the scraping sound again from Dennis's yard. I crept to my window and peeked through the curtains. There was someone in the garden, but it was too dark to make out who. They were moving slowly between the rows, and every few seconds, they'd stop and look up at my window, like they knew I was watching. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but by the time I looked back outside, whoever was had vanished. The next morning, another basket, another photo. This one was taken from inside my apartment. Inside, it showed me sleeping, but from a different angle than the first one. This time from the corner of my bedroom, near my dresser. The timestamp read 3:17 a.m. Someone had been in my bedroom again, while I was sleeping, while I was lying there, terrified, thinking I was safe behind my locked door and wedge chair. I tore my apartment apart, looking for how they got in, checked every window, every door, looked for hidden cameras, loose floorboards, anything. I even called my landlord asking if anyone else had keys. Nothing made sense. That's when I noticed something in the photo that made my hand shake. In the corner, barely visible, was the edge of something. It looked like the hem of a shirt. Someone had been standing in my room when this photo was taken, and they'd accidentally caught part of themselves in the shot. It was a button-down shirt, crisp and clean, just like the ones Dennis always wore. I printed out the photo and zoomed in on my computer. The more I enhanced it, the clearer it became. There was definitely someone standing just outside the frame, and that was definitely the edge of a shirt sleeve. But Dennis was supposedly fine, according to the police. So either he was lying about the photos, or someone else was wearing his clothes, or that's when the really sick thought hit me. What if Dennis wasn't okay? What if someone had done something to him? And now they were living in his house, using his garden, wearing his clothes. What if I wasn't just being stalked? What if I was the next target? I decided to break into Dennis's house. I know how that sounds, but I had to know if Dennis was really okay, then I'd apologize and deal with whatever consequences came from that. But if something had happened to him, if someone was using his house as a base to terrorize me, I waited until 2 a.m., then climbed the fence into his backyard. The back door was unlocked. That should have been my first warning to turn around, but I was too scared and too angry to think straight. Dennis's house was dark and smelled wrong. Not like death or anything obvious, just stale, like no one had opened a window in months. I used my phone's flashlight to navigate, moving as quietly as I could. The downstairs looked normal enough. Kitchen was clean, living room tidy, but there were little things that seemed off. The coffee maker was unplugged, and there was a thin layer of dust on everything. Mail was piled up on the counter. Unopened bills going back weeks. I crept upstairs to check the bedrooms. The first one was clearly Dennis's, bed neatly made, clothes hanging in the closet, but it felt unused like a museum display. The second bedroom was where things got really wrong. The walls were covered with photos, hundreds of them, all Polaroids, all of me. Photos of me leaving for work, coming home, taking out the trash, sitting on my couch watching TV. Some were taken through my windows, others from impossible angles. like from inside my apartment when I knew I was alone. There was a timeline, too, written in careful handwriting on the wall, tracking my daily routine down to the minute. What time I left for work, 8:15 a.m. What time I got home, usually between 6:30 and 7 p.m. What I ate for dinner, what shows I watched. And in the center of it all, sitting on a desk surrounded by photography equipment, was a stack of fresh Polaroid film and what looked like a detailed floor plan of my apartment. I heard footsteps downstairs. My blood went ice cold. Someone was in the house with me, moving around the kitchen. I could hear the soft squeak of sneakers on linoleum, the gentle click of cabinet doors opening and closing. I was trapped upstairs with no way out except past whoever was down there. I tried to call 911, but my phone had no signal. Of course, I crept to the bedroom window and looked down at the garden. That's when I saw him, Dennis, standing in his garden, looking up at me. But something was wrong with his face. In the moonlight, I could see that his expression was empty, not angry, not surprised to see me in his house. Just blank, like he was looking at a bug under glass. He raised one hand and waved. The same polite wave he'd given me every morning for 3 years. The footsteps downstairs stopped. I realized that whoever was in the house wasn't Dennis. Dennis was outside in the garden, staring up at me with that horrible, empty expression. So, who the hell was downstairs? That's when I heard them start climbing the stairs. Slow, deliberate steps. No attempt at stealth now. I looked around the room for anything I could use as a weapon, but it was just photos and camera equipment. I grabbed a heavy telephoto lens and positioned myself beside the door. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs and paused. Then I heard the voice. "Jake, I know you're up here." It sounded like Dennis. Exactly like Dennis. Same slight rasp, same careful pronunciation. But Dennis was outside in the garden. "I've been wanting to talk to you for a while now," the voice continued. "About the photos. About how much I've enjoyed getting to know you." The door handle started to turn. I swung that camera lens as hard as I could as the door opened. It connected with something solid, and I heard a grunt of pain. I didn't wait to see what I'd hit. I just ran. I bolted down the stairs, through the kitchen, and out the back door. Dennis was still standing in the garden, still staring up at that bedroom window with the same blank expression. When he saw me running, he tilted his head slightly, like a dog hearing a strange sound. I vaulted the fence and sprinted to my apartment, slamming the door behind me and immediately calling 911. The police came this time. Real police, 2 officers who took my statement seriously and went to investigate Dennis's house. They found it empty. No signs of forced entry. No evidence of anyone living there recently. No photos on the walls. No surveillance equipment. Nothing. According to the officers, Dennis had been dead for 6 weeks. Heart attack, they said. His body was found by his sister when she came to check on him after he missed their weekly phone call. They'd been wondering why it took me so long to report him missing, since I was his closest neighbor. 6 weeks. For 6 weeks, someone had been living in that house. Someone who knew Dennis well enough to imitate his voice perfectly. Someone who had been watching me, photographing me, learning every detail of my life. The photos I'd been left were never found. The police said I must have been mistaken, that the stress of discovering my neighbor's death had caused me to imagine things. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. The really sick part? After Dennis's sister cleaned out his house and put up for sale, I found out something that still makes my skin crawl. Dennis had been nearly blind. Cataract so bad that his sister said he could barely make out shapes, let alone tend a garden or take photographs. The garden I'd been admiring for months, the one that was so perfectly maintained, Dennis couldn't have been the one taking care of it. Someone else had been living there, using his house, maintaining his routines, pretending to be him. And I'd been so focused on the polite waves and the free vegetables that I never looked close enough to notice. The house has been empty for 3 months now. For sale signs up the whole time. getting more faded and crooked with each storm. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear that scraping sound from the yard next door, the gentle scrape of a trowel in dirt. Last week, I found another basket by my door. Inside was a single key and a note written in that same careful handwriting I'd seen on the timeline upstairs. Thank you for being such a good neighbor. The house next door has been sold. The new owner is very excited to meet you. He's been watching you for quite some time. I called the real estate agent. The house hasn't been sold. It's still on the market, still empty. But every morning at 6:30 a.m., I hear someone in that garden. And every evening when I get home from work, there's someone standing at the upstairs window, watching me park my car. I've been thinking about moving, but here's the thing that keeps me awake at night. What if moving doesn't help? What if whoever was pretending to be Dennis wasn't just interested in that house, but in me specifically? What if they've already found their next house, their next identity, their next way to get close to me? Because yesterday, I met my new neighbor across the street. Nice guy, mid-50s, always wears these crisp button-down shirts. Real green thumb. His garden's already looking perfect. And when he introduced himself, he had the same polite wave, the same careful way of speaking. He told me his name was David. But I swear to God, when he smiled, I saw Dennis's teeth. I need you to understand something before I tell you this story. I'm not some paranoid person who sees danger everywhere. I'm a software engineer. I work remote. I keep to myself. Logic and evidence. That's how I operate. But what happened to me over the past 6 months? It's made me question everything I thought I knew about safety, about privacy, about the people who live right next door to us. It started with vegetables. Something so innocent, so neighborly. And it ended with me having to move 3 states away and change my name. If you live alone, if you have that one neighbor who's always been a little too friendly, a little too interested, you need to hear this. So I moved into this duplex in Portland about 2 years ago. Nothing fancy, just one of those older places where the landlord split a house down the middle. Thin walls, shared driveway, you know the deal. The rent was decent for the neighborhood. And honestly, after living in cramped apartments with roommates for years, having my own space felt like winning the lottery. My neighbor was this guy named Dale, mid-50s, maybe worked some kind of night shift job, security or cleaning. I never really asked. The thing about Dale was that he was enthusiastic about being neighborly, like aggressively friendly in that way that makes you feel guilty for not reciprocating. The first week I moved in, he knocked on my door with a casserole. "Welcome to the neighborhood," he said, this big smile stretching across his face. Dale had one of those smiles that showed too much gum, you know? And these pale blue eyes that never seemed to blink enough. "Thanks," I said, taking the dish. "That's really thoughtful." "We're going to be great neighbors," he said, lingering in my doorway a beat too long. I can already tell. After that, it was constant. He'd wave whenever he saw me coming or going. Always had some comment about the weather or my car, or asking how work was going. I'd be polite, give short answers, but Dale never seemed to pick up on social cues. The vegetable thing started in late spring. I came home from a grocery run one evening, and there was this wicker basket by my front door. Inside were 3 perfect tomatoes and a note written in careful block letters. From Dale's garden. "Hope you enjoy. More to come." I looked over at his side of the property. Sure enough, he'd planted this neat little vegetable patch along the fence line. Rows of tomatoes, cucumbers, some leafy greens. It actually looked pretty impressive. I knocked on his door to thank him. When he answered, his face lit up like I'd just made his entire week. "You got them. How do they look?" "Great," I said. "Really generous of you. You didn't have to." "Nonsense. That's what neighbors do. Besides, I always plant too much. Can't eat it all myself." The vegetables kept coming. Every few days, I'd find that basket by my door with whatever was ready from his garden. Cucumbers, more tomatoes, zucchini, peppers, and always a little note. Hope these brighten your day, or fresh picked this morning. I'll admit, the produce was incredible. Better than anything I could buy at the store. And Dale never seemed to want anything in return except maybe a wave or a thank you when I saw him outside. My girlfriend Sarah thought it was sweet. We'd been dating for about 8 months at that point, and she'd come over on weekends. She'd see the vegetables and be like, "Your neighbor is so cute," like having a grandpa next door. He's not that old, I'd say, and it's a little much, don't you think? You're being paranoid, Jake. The guy's just being nice. When's the last time you had neighbors who actually gave a shit about you? She had a point. In the city, you're lucky if your neighbors know your name. Here was Dale, sharing the literal fruits of his labor, asking for nothing in return. Maybe I was being ungrateful, but there were these little things that bugged me, like how Dale always seemed to be outside when I got home from work. I'd pull into the driveway, and there he'd be, watering his plants or pulling weeds, ready with that big smile and a wave. Or how he'd ask specific questions. Not just, how was work? But working late again? I saw your lights on past midnight Tuesday. Or that your girlfriend's car, the blue Honda, she was here pretty late Sunday. Sarah said I was overthinking it. He's probably lonely, Jake. You said he works nights, right? So he's awake when most people are sleeping. Of course he notices things. The vegetables continued through the summer. I got used to checking that basket every few days. Started to rely on it. Actually, Dale's timing was perfect. Just when I'd used up the last batch, there'd be a fresh delivery waiting. Then October hit and the delivery stopped. At first, I figured the growing season was over. Made sense, right? But I realized I hadn't seen Dale outside in his usual spots either. No more friendly waves when I pulled into the driveway. His side of the duplex was quiet. I thought maybe he'd picked up extra shifts at work or something. But after 2 weeks of not seeing him at all, I started to worry. Dale might have been a little intense, but he'd been nothing but kind to me. What if something had happened to him? I knocked on his door one evening. No answer. Knocked again. Nothing. I walked around to his side of the backyard to check on the garden. That's when I noticed how overgrown everything looked. The neat rows of vegetables had been taken over by weeds. Tomatoes hung rotting on the vine. It looked like no one had tended to it in weeks. That night, I called the landlord. "Dale," she said. "Oh, he moved out. Beginning of the month." Moved out? He didn't say anything to me. Yeah, it was sudden. Gave his 30 days notice in September and was gone October 1st. Real quiet about it. Left the place clean, though. I hung up feeling weird about the whole thing. Dale had seemed so invested in being neighborly, in maintaining that garden. It was strange that he'd just disappear without saying goodbye. But people move, right? Maybe he got a better job offer or wanted to change the scenery. Life went back to normal. I had to start buying vegetables at the store again, which felt almost wrong after months of Dale's premium produce. Sarah and I joked about how spoiled I'd gotten. 3 weeks after learning Dale had moved out, I found the basket by my door again. I almost stepped on it coming home from work. The same wicker basket, sitting in its usual spot by my front door. For a split second, my heart jumped. Maybe Dale was back. Maybe the landlord had been wrong about him moving out. But when I looked inside, instead of vegetables, there was a single Polaroid photograph. It was a picture of me sleeping. I was lying on my side in my bed, facing the window, completely unconscious. The photo was taken from outside, through my bedroom window. You could see the edge of the window frame in the shot, and beyond that, me, dead asleep in my boxers and a t-shirt. My first reaction was to laugh. I mean, what else do you do? It was so bizarre, so random, that it had to be some kind of joke. Maybe Dale had left it as a prank before he moved out, and it had just been sitting there for weeks. But the more I looked at the photo, the less funny it became. The image was sharp, clear, recent. I recognized the sheets. I'd only bought them a month ago, and there was my phone on the nightstand, the same phone case I gotten just 2 weeks prior. This photo had been taken recently, like within the past few days recently. I looked toward Dale's side of the duplex. Still dark, still looked abandoned. The garden was even more overgrown now, like a jungle of dying plants. I brought the photo inside and called Sarah. Someone took a picture of me sleeping. I said when she picked up, "What? What do you mean?" I explained about finding the basket, about the photograph. Sarah went quiet for a long moment. "Jake, that's really fucked up. Did you call the police and tell them what? Someone left me a photo. They probably think it was a prank too." "A prank?" "Jake, someone was outside your bedroom window, taking pictures of you while you slept. That's not a prank, that's stalking." When she put it like that, it hit me how serious this actually was. Someone had been watching me, close enough to take a clear photo through my window. Someone knew when I was most vulnerable. "I'm coming over," Sarah said. "Don't touch anything else. We're calling the cops." The police were less than helpful. Officer Martinez and his partner looked at the photo, took some notes, asked the expected questions. Had I noticed anyone suspicious in the area? Any vehicles that didn't belong? Had I received any threats? No, and no. Could be someone you know playing a prank. Officer Martinez suggested. Ex-girlfriend. Co-worker with a weird sense of humor? I don't think any of my friends would break into my backyard and take pictures of me sleeping. I said, "Well, technically they didn't break in. Your backyard isn't fenced, and they stayed outside the house. No laws broken, really, except maybe trespassing. So what do? Install some security lights. Maybe get a camera or two. If it happens again, call us. But honestly, it's probably nothing. Probably just someone messing with you." After they left, Sarah helped me tape cardboard over my bedroom window and move the basket inside as evidence. "You're staying at my place tonight," she said. "This is too weird." But I didn't want to be run out of my own home by some random creep. "I'll be fine. I'll sleep on the couch away from the windows." "Jake, I'll be fine," I repeated. "Besides, if they come back, maybe I'll catch them." Sarah reluctantly went home, making me promise to call if anything else happened. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside, a car door, wind through the trees, a cat yowling, made me freeze and listen. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps in the gravel driveway. Soft, deliberate steps. I crept to the living room window and peeked through the blinds. Nothing. Just empty driveway and street lights. But in the morning, the basket was back. Another Polaroid. This one showed me at my living room window the night before, holding the first photograph. You could see me clearly through the glass, looking down at the image in my hands. The angle was from across the street, taken with what must have been a zoom lens. Someone had been watching me react to the first photo. They'd seen me discover it, seen my confusion, and captured that moment too. The second photo felt different than the first, more intentional, like someone was documenting a process, creating a sequence. This time I called the police immediately. The same officers came out. Officer Martinez looked at both photos with a bit more concern this time. "Okay, this is definitely harassment," he said. "Someone's clearly targeting you specifically. Any idea who might want to mess with you? Recent breakups, workplace conflicts, anything?" I told him about Dale, about how he'd moved out suddenly after months of being overly friendly. "You think your neighbor's doing this?" "I don't know. Maybe." He was always paying attention to my schedule, asking personal questions. And he just disappeared without saying goodbye. "You got a forwarding address?" I didn't. The officer said they'd look into it, see if they could track Dale down to the landlord or DMV records. In the meantime, they recommended I install security cameras and consider staying somewhere else until this got resolved. "But don't touch the basket. If another photo shows up," Officer Martinez said, "call us first. Maybe we can get prints." That evening, I went to Sarah's apartment. She'd already cleared space in her closet for some of my clothes. "You can stay as long as you need," she said. "This is seriously creepy, Jake. Like, restraining order level creepy." Yeah, I agreed. I just don't understand what they want. Why me? Does it matter? Someone stalking you, taking pictures of you in your own home. That's enough. We ordered Chinese food and tried to watch Netflix, but I couldn't focus. Every few minutes, I'd check my phone, expecting a call from the police or an alert from the security app I'd installed earlier that day. Around 11 p.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected in the backyard. The app showed a grainy black and white view of my backyard. I could see the overgrown garden next door, my own small patio, and there, a figure in dark clothing moving near my front door. "Sarah, call 911, I said, shoving the phone toward her. The figure was crouched by my door for maybe 30 seconds, then disappeared from the camera's view. By the time the police arrived 15 minutes later, whoever it was had been long gone, but they'd left another basket. Photo number 3. This one showed me and Sarah on her couch, taken through her living room window. We were sitting close together, my arm around her shoulders, both of us looking at my phone, probably checking the security app. The timestamp in the corner showed it had been taken just 20 minutes earlier. They'd followed me to Sarah's apartment. They knew where she lived now, too. Sarah went pale when she saw the photo. "They were here," she whispered, "outside my window while we were sitting right here." The police took the photo as evidence and said they'd increase patrols in both neighborhoods. But I could see it in their eyes. This was escalating beyond typical pranks or harassment. This was someone with real intent, real planning. Someone who wasn't going to stop. The next photo appeared 2 days later. Left at Sarah's apartment this time. It showed me grocery shopping. I was in the cereal aisle at the Safeway near Sarah's place, reaching for a box of granola. The photo was taken from the end of the aisle, far enough away that I never would have noticed a photographer. "They're following you everywhere," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Jake, this person knows your routine. They know where you work, where you shop, where you sleep." Photo 5 came the next day. Me at the gas station, filling up my car. Photo 6, walking out of the coffee shop near my office. Photo 7, sitting at my desk, working on my laptop. This one was taken from outside the building, 3 stories up. Someone had been on the roof of the building across the street with a telephoto lens. Each photo was like a piece of evidence in a case I didn't understand. Someone was building a comprehensive record of my life, documenting my movements with the methodical precision of a private investigator. The police were more involved now. Detective Walsh had taken over the case, and she'd managed to track down Dale's forwarding address through the DMV. But when they went to check it out, the address led to a vacant lot. Either he gave fake information or he's covering his tracks. Walsh told me during one of our meetings. The landlord said he paid his last month's rent in cash and left no contact information. So what do? We're working on it. In the meantime, I'd recommend changing your routine as much as possible. Take different routes to work. Shop at different stores. Vary your schedule. Make yourself harder to predict. But how do you make yourself unpredictable when someone's been studying your pattern for months? Every choice felt like it might be anticipated. Every change in routine might already be accounted for. Sarah and I started staying at hotels, paying cash, switching locations every couple of days. I took time off work and avoided going to any of my usual places. For a week, it seemed to work. No new photos, no sign of surveillance. Then I made a mistake. I needed clothes for my apartment. I'd been wearing the same 3 outfits for over a week, and everything smelled like hotel soap and stress sweat. Against Sarah's protests, I decided to make a quick run to my place during lunch, grab some more clothes, and get out. I parked a block away and approached my duplex from the back alley. The place looked exactly as I'd left it. Curtains drawn, security lights I'd installed still blinking on their mounts. Dale's side still looked abandoned. I used my key and slipped inside quickly. The air smelled stale, undisturbed. I went straight to my bedroom, threw some clothes in a duffel bag, grabbed my good laptop charger and a few other essentials. As I was leaving, I noticed something on my kitchen counter that hadn't been there before. A Polaroid photo. This one showed the inside of my apartment. My living room, taken from the hallway leading to the bedrooms. You could see my couch, my TV, my coffee table with its stack of unread magazines. Everything exactly as I had left it. Someone had been inside my apartment. I called Detective Walsh from my car, hands shaking as I dialed. "They've been in my apartment," I said when she answered. "What? When?" "I don't know. I just found a photo on my kitchen counter. Someone's been inside. Get out of there now. Don't go back inside. Don't touch anything. We're sending units over." The police searched my apartment thoroughly. No signs of forced entry. No fingerprints on the photo or anything else that didn't belong there. Whoever had gotten inside was careful, professional. They either picked the lock or they have a key, Detective Walsh said. "Is there anyone who might have access?" "Landlord, previous tenant, maintenance worker." "Previous tenant. Dale. My neighbor Dale," I said. "He lived here for years before I moved in. What if he made copies of the keys? What if he never really moved out?" Detective Walsh looked intrigued. "You think he's been living next door this whole time?" "I don't know, but his place has been dark for months. What if that's just what he wants everyone to think?" That evening, Detective Walsh got a warrant to search Dale's side of the duplex. What they found inside made my stomach turn. Dale hadn't moved out. The front rooms of his apartment were empty, staged to look abandoned. But the back bedroom had been converted into something that made the police officers' faces go pale. The walls were covered with photographs of me. Hundreds of them. Some of the Polaroids I'd already seen, but most were new. Photos of me taken over months, maybe longer. Me leaving for work, coming home, taking out garbage, checking my mail. Photos taken from inside my apartment. Me cooking dinner, watching TV, sleeping. Photos of Sarah and me together, dating back to when we first started seeing each other. There was a detailed schedule of my activities written on a whiteboard. Wake-up time, work schedule, grocery shopping patterns, when Sarah usually visited. Everything documented with obsessive precision. In one corner was a pile of equipment. Telephoto lenses, night vision scopes, lockpicks, listening devices, and copies of my keys labeled with neat handwriting. Front door, back door, mailbox. Detective Walsh found a journal filled with notes about me written in the same block lettering as the vegetable basket notes. Pages and pages of observations. Subject works late on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Girlfriend visits Friday evenings and stays until Sunday morning. Subject prefers to sleep on his right side. Window provides clear view of bed from garden area. Subject responds well to friendly gestures. Trust established through vegetable deliveries. Subject becoming suspicious. Need to adjust approach. The final entry was dated just 3 days earlier. Subject has become unpredictable. Staying at multiple locations. Avoiding routine. Time to escalate. Subject needs to understand this is not a game. Where is he now? I asked Detective Walsh. We don't know, but we got units watching the building, and we're treating this as a stalking case with intent to harm. This level of surveillance, the break-ins, the psychological manipulation, this guy is dangerous. They found Dale's car parked in a garage 6 blocks away. Inside were more photos, including shots of the various hotels Sarah and I had stayed at over the past week. He'd been following us the entire time. We need to get you somewhere safe, Detective Walsh said. This isn't just harassment anymore. This is someone who's been planning something for months, possibly years. That night, Sarah and I stayed at a safe house the police had arranged. But I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside made me wonder if Dale had found us again. What did I do? I kept asking Sarah. What did I do to make him fixate on me like this? Nothing, she said. You didn't do anything wrong. This isn't about you, Jake. This is about him being sick. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to it. Something I was missing. The answer came the next morning. Detective Walsh called early, her voice tight with urgency. We found Dale. He's dead. What? Apparent suicide. Shot himself in his car about an hour ago. But Jake, before he died, he made a phone call. The recordings, you need to hear this. She played the 911 call for me. This is Dale Patterson. I'm calling to confess to stalking Jake Morrison at my address. I've been watching him for 2 years. I've broken into his home, taken photographs, followed him. I know this is wrong, but I couldn't stop. I love him. I've always loved him. The voice paused, breathing heavily. But Jake's going to be fine now. I made sure of that. I made sure he'll be safe. I made sure no one else will hurt him like I did. Then the sound of a gunshot. What did he mean he made sure I'd be safe? I asked Detective Walsh. She was quiet for a long moment. Jake, we found something else in Dale's apartment. A list of names and addresses. People you know. Sarah's name was at the top, with detailed notes about her daily routine. Your co-workers, your friends, your family members back in Ohio. He'd been researching everyone in your life. My blood went cold. Why? We think he was planning to eliminate anyone he saw as a threat to his connection with you. Anyone who might take you away from him or put you in danger. Jesus Christ. There's something else. We found plane tickets in his name. For today. He was planning to leave town, but not before. She trailed off. Before what? Before making sure you'd have to come with him. We found maps of Sarah's apartment building, along with detailed plans and tools. I felt like I was going to be sick. So what now? I asked, is it over? Detective Walsh sighed. As far as we know, yes. Dale's dead, and there's no evidence of anyone else being involved. But Jake, there's one more thing. What? We never found all the photographs, based on the numbering system in his journal. There should be dozens more photos than what we recovered from his apartment. We think he hid them somewhere. What kind of photos? We don't know, but given the escalation pattern, and the fact that he had access to your apartment for months. She didn't finish the sentence. I understood. There were more photos of me out there. More intimate photos. More invasive documentation of my life. Photos that might surface someday. Somehow, even dead, Dale was still watching me. Epilogue 30:00-30:30. That was 6 months ago. I moved out of Portland the day after Dale's body was found. Didn't even go back to collect my belongings. I had the police box everything up and ship it to my new address. I live in Denver now, in a high-security apartment building with cameras and key card access. I work for a different company, under a different name. Sarah and I broke up, not because of what happened, but because we couldn't be together without both of us thinking about those photos, about how we've been watched during our most private moments. I still check over my shoulder when I'm walking alone. I still tape cardboard over my windows when I sleep. And sometimes when I'm grocery shopping or getting coffee, I'll see someone taking a photo with their phone, and my heart will start racing. Because here's the thing Detective Walsh never told me. The thing I figured out myself. They never found Dale's phone. And last week, I got an email from an anonymous account. No message, just a subject line that said, "Miss you," and an attachment I haven't opened yet. I know I shouldn't open it. I know I should delete it and call Detective Walsh and maybe move again. But part of me needs to know. Part of me needs to see what Dale left behind. What final piece of his obsession he wanted me to have. The attachment is probably just another photo. Maybe one of the missing ones from his collection. Maybe something worse. But as I sit here, staring at this email, I can't help wondering, what if Dale wasn't working alone? What if someone else has been watching me all this time, waiting for Dale to get out of the way? What if this was never really about Dale at all? I guess there's only one way to find out. I've lived in a lot of different places over the years, basement studios, shared houses, cramped city apartments with paper-thin walls. But there's one place I'll never forget, not because of the rent or the location, but because of what I saw from my bedroom window. It wasn't violent. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, almost too quiet. And it started with just a woman across the alley who never closed her curtains. When I moved into that apartment, I thought I'd gotten lucky. Decent rent, close to work, a little old but clean. My bedroom window looked straight across a narrow alley into another building. One of those brick pre-war ones with tall ceilings and big windows. The first week, I noticed the apartment directly opposite mine had its curtains wide open. Not halfway, not tied back, just fully open, day and night. A woman lived there. Late 20s maybe, dark hair, pale skin. She wasn't doing anything strange. Most nights I'd glance over while brushing my teeth and see her cooking, sitting on the couch reading, folding laundry. Sometimes she'd pace while on the phone. Sometimes she'd just stare at her laptop. I didn't think much of it. Just another neighbor living her life. One night, maybe 2 months in, I couldn't sleep. It was around 2 a.m. I got out to get some water and, without thinking, I glanced out the window. She was there, but this time she wasn't moving. She was standing about 2 feet from her own window, facing out, looking directly toward me. The lights in her apartment were off. At first, I thought maybe she was just looking at the city, zoning out. But the longer I watched, the stranger it felt. Her posture was rigid, not the relaxed lean you do when you're looking outside. Her shoulders were squared. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, then got this weird jolt in my stomach. Like when you realize someone's looking through you, not at you. I backed away, pulled my blinds shut, and tried not to think about it. The next morning, I glanced over out of habit. Her apartment was empty, and I don't mean she was just out. The furniture was gone. No couch, no shelves, no curtains even. The walls looked bare, like no one had lived there for months. I stood there confused. I'd literally seen her less than 12 hours earlier. I asked my landlord if anyone from that unit had moved out. He said that apartment was a short-term rental. People came and went all the time. Maybe she left early. I let it go, but it didn't sit right. 2 nights later, I woke up again. This time, it wasn't for water, I just felt off. You know that feeling when something wakes you up, but you don't know what? The room was dark, but I could see my own curtains drawn wide open. I didn't remember opening them. My skin went cold. Slowly, I turned my head toward the window. Across the alley, in the empty apartment, was a shape, not lit by a lamp, not outlined in moonlight, just a darker patch of darkness, standing exactly where she used to. The height, the stillness, it was the same as that night she stood staring out with the lights off. I didn't move. I just lay there, staring at it, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. At some point, my eyes watered from not blinking, and I looked away for half a second. When I looked back, it was gone. For days after that, I kept my curtains closed, day and night. But I started noticing other things. Little scratches near my window latch. A faint smell of cigarette smoke in my room, even though I didn't smoke. And one morning when I went to leave for work, I found something on my doormat, a small silver key. It wasn't mine. I asked the landlord if it was for the front gate or the mailboxes. He checked. It wasn't. That night, I couldn't help myself. I peeked out just for a second. The apartment across the alley was still empty, but the curtains were back, wide open. Only this time, they were my curtains. The exact same ones I had in my bedroom, same color, same pattern. And in the reflection of the glass, just barely visible, was a shape again, but closer. Too close, like it was standing almost inside my side of the window. I didn't sleep at all that night. By morning, I'd packed a bag and left. I moved out 2 weeks later. I never found out who that woman was, or how she disappeared so fast. I never figure out how my curtains ended up in that empty apartment or what that key unlocked, and I don't want to know. But sometimes, late at night, if I can't sleep, I'll catch myself glancing at the window across from wherever I'm living. And every now and then, I'll think I see a dark shape standing perfectly still, watching, waiting.